Welcome to this edition of NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Charlene Aaron. Today on the broadcast, the mystery of the blood moons. How is this natural phenomena linked to biblical prophecy and current events in the Middle East?
But first, we want to go to the CBN newsroom for the latest updates on today's news. Here's Mark Martin.
Thanks, Ephraim. President Obama is responding to the beheading of American journalist James Foley by militants with the Islamic State extremist group. The militants say the killing is a warning to President Obama and America, but the president says America will not waver in confronting terrorism. In an afternoon address, President Obama said the world is appalled by the murder of American journalist James Foley at the hands of ISIS militants.
Jim was taken from us in an act of violence that shocks the conscience of the entire world.
His words follow the release of a chilling video. It shows the 40-year foreign correspondent on his knees with an ISIS executioner holding a knife in his left hand. In tears, Foley's family reacted publicly to their son's death.
We miss his courage, his love, his determination. His laugh, his smile.
The murder is retaliation for U.S. airstrikes in northern Iraq, and the militant Muslim army is now threatening to kill another American hostage, freelance journalist Stephen Joel Sotloff.
This is a tragedy which is beyond imagining. There are no words to describe this kind of inhumanity.
Lawmakers say ISIS is capable of carrying out an attack on U.S. soil, and they want the president to deal with the terrorists even more forcefully.
ISIS method of diplomacy are beheadings, crucifixions, mass executions, or live burials, and enslavement of women and forced marriages. These are evil people. They need to be defeated.
ISIS opposition is growing across the globe. The ISIS militant in the video is speaking English with a British accent. That raised concern in the UK, with the Prime Minister cutting his vacation short and his foreign minister speaking out.
Some of those foreign nationals who may at some stage seek to return to their countries of origin and carry out attacks in them.
In Germany, thousands of Kurds, Yazidis, and others took to the streets, calling on the international community to intervene. Religious leaders are also speaking out. A group of scholars in the U.S. are calling for the destruction of ISIS with an online petition. Monday, the Pope gave his blessing to efforts to stop the terrorist group, and even Muslim leaders are slamming the actions of ISIS. ISIS is threatening to behead another American hostage. Stephen Sotloff worked in the region as a freelance journalist. He was kidnapped near the Syria-Turkish border just over a year ago. Meanwhile, James Foley's mother paid tribute to her son on Facebook, writing, "He gave his life trying to expose the world to the suffering of the Syrian people. Like Jim, they are innocents. They have no control over American government policy in Iraq, Syria, or anywhere in the world." And another example of the Islamic terrorist threats against the world, ISIS has issued a new warning for America. According to Reuters, the threat came from a video on YouTube. It showed a blood-stained American flag with the phrase, "We will drown all of you in blood." It also showed edited video clips of militants shooting U.S. soldiers and an American beheaded during the Iraqi war. The Yazidi people have been persecuted for thousands of years. In fact, they faced attempted genocide 74 different times, including this latest attack by ISIS. Joining me now is Shanaz Oso, a Yazidi woman whose family escaped persecution and made it to the United States. Welcome, Shanaz.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, when you hear about what's happening to your people in Iraq, what goes through your mind, Shanaz?
I just still think that it's all surreal. Like, I can't believe that my family over there is actually going through this until I hear all the stories. I mean, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking hearing what your family has to say when they call and let you know what they're going through. It's just, you feel helpless being so many miles away, just thinking if I was there, I could help them. But you have to do the best you can while you're here. So you do feel helpless, and even like small things like eating or throwing away food, you feel guilty for that just because, you know, they're starving over there. They're dying of thirst. They don't have a place to sleep. It's been really tough on all of us, even though we're 6,000 miles away.
Talk about your family. What has happened to them as a result of ISIS? I understand many of them have been victims of this attempted genocide. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. My mother's sister-in-law's family, before the genocide, there was 24 members in total. As of now, including her, there's only one other member of their family remaining. 22 of them have been killed. So out of 24, there's 2 left. And my family on my mother and my father's side have escaped to Syria, and they say that it's just not much better. We do get to Skype with them every once in a while when they do get electricity or internet, and we get to see it face to face. I mean, just see what they're going through. There's about 14 of them living in one bedroom. They don't have much water. They don't have much to eat, so they can never really say, I'm full, or it's better here. So it's not much better, even if you do get to escape to Syria or to other parts of the region.
All right, Shanaz Oso, thank you so much for your time today. And just remember that you're not alone. We're with you, and God is with you as well. We wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we want to mention that you can watch the full interview with Shanaz at cbnnews.com. We have a link to a website that she talked about where they're trying to start a petition to get the American government to be more active, either with military support or in other ways to help the Yazidi people. And we'll have a link to that website on our website, cbnnews.com. In other news, Hamas rocket fire forced Israelis to take shelter today in at least 2 major cities. CBN's John Wagi has the latest from Jerusalem.
Israeli airstrikes boomed in the Gaza darkness, a response to at least 50 rockets Hamas fired into Israel, some of them directed at Israel's major population centers. Israel struck at least 30 targets in Gaza. One of them was the home of Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif, whose wife and child were reported killed. Hamas quit the ceasefire talks in Egypt, and one spokesman said hell will be unleashed on Israel. Jerusalem returned to a kind of cautionary normal after sirens sounded Tuesday, both here and in Tel Aviv. But polls show Israelis are in no mood for a diplomatic tap dance with Hamas.
We don't necessarily know how it's all going to end, and it's definitely not going to end pretty.
The latest Peace Index poll, taken before Hamas broke the most recent ceasefire, shows 58% of Israeli Jews want to defeat Hamas through military action, and a near unanimous 97% believe Israel's military is doing a good or excellent job. Israelis we talked to seemed resigned to the idea that the fight must continue, despite the heavy stress of rocket attacks.
I never thought in my life, at 11 something or 12 o'clock last night, just sitting on my bed, I would hear that sound, and you're hearing it now, and everyone is a part of it.
We try to do our best to get the situation to be good, and they don't want to do it.
Maybe something will change. Maybe the world eyes will be open, and they will see it's not normal to live like that. The evil, it's not us.
Hamas claims Israel's airstrikes were designed to thwart the Cairo talks.
We're warning the Israeli occupation from continuing this escalation and violating the ceasefire. We put the responsibility on Israel for this escalation and the implications of it.
Indirect talks between Israel and Hamas failed in part because Hamas wanted Israel to restore Palestinian access to Gaza by land, sea, and air, without giving up its huge store of weapons.
A seaport or an air port without commitment for demilitarization is like a duty-free for rocket and missiles.
As the fighting resumes, Israel is pursuing leads in its major bust of a Hamas plot in the West Bank. The security agency Shin Bet found a collection of terror cells headed by a ringleader in Turkey. They were getting ready to launch a coup against the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah and hit a number of Israeli targets, including the Temple Mount. John Wagi, CBN News, Jerusalem.
An Iowa judge has ruled in favor of banning the distribution of abortion-inducing pills via video conferencing. CBN News exposed this controversial practice called telemed abortion 3 years ago. Now the Des Moines Register reports a district judge ruled the state's Board of Medicine has authority to regulate such issues. Doctors will now have to be present to distribute abortion-inducing pills to women in rural clinics. Planned Parenthood says it will appeal the decision. Protests turned violent once again in Ferguson, Missouri, despite plans for U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder to visit the city today. He's meeting with FBI and other officials to determine if an independent investigation is needed into the police shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. Last night, police and the National Guard tried to keep a lower profile, but peaceful demonstrations soon turned violent, forcing them to arrest 47 people. Police did not use tear gas or smoke bombs. The Supreme Court is delaying the start of same-sex marriage in Virginia. The court has granted a request from a county clerk, that is, in Northern Virginia to block same-sex marriages across the state while the issue is being appealed to the Supreme Court. Without court intervention, same-sex couples would have been allowed to wed starting tomorrow. Bank of America has reached a record $17 billion settlement with federal and state authorities. It's over the bank's role in the sale of mortgage-backed securities in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis. A source told the Associated Press the bank will pay $10 billion in cash and provide consumer relief valued at $7 billion. The official announcement is not expected until Thursday. Back with more on the life of the Yazidi people. Stay with us.
Here at CBN News, we have told you about the Islamic terrorists rampaging through Iraq, slaughtering Christians and other minorities. One of those groups is called the Yazidis.
That's right. The Yazidi people have now been rescued from the mountain where ISIS trapped them, but their long ordeal has just begun. Chris Mitchell has their story from the Iraqi-Syrian border, where thousands have reached safety.
It looks like a scene out of the Bible, a modern-day Exodus. Tens of thousands made the trek from Mount Sinjar all the way here to the United Nations refugee camp. For some, a 2, 3, even 4-day journey. Most of them came with just the clothes on their back. And out of the multitude, each one has a story. When ISIS attacked Sinjar, home to most of these Yazidis, Guli Udaida, a name which means God giveth, said it felt like the end of the world.
When they came, they caught some people and kidnapped beautiful girls and took them away. We escaped. The ones that stayed, ISIS killed.
When they got to Mount Sinjar, her son went back for food. ISIS captured him, shot him, took out his eyes and cut off his head. His friend buried him. The mountain had its own horrors. Flus Kadar used this cap from a medicine bottle to keep her children alive.
I gave my children a drop of water every hour. The water was very far away.
When the Yazidis made their escape from Mount Sinjar, this is the route that they took. Mount Sinjar is about 100 miles away, and most of that is simply desert. They finally came to this desert road behind me, crossed the Tigris River, and made their way up the road to the United Nations camp. It took Kadar 4 days to make the walk. He had arrived just 1 hour before we talked to him.
We are in a desperate situation. We don't have any hope. We don't have any salvation. I am tired and I just want to get some sleep.
These 12-year-old boys, like Tassim, saw things likely to haunt them the rest of their lives. Razine remembers the mountain.
Many kids died on the mountain because there was no water. We escaped from ISIS because they wanted us to convert to Islam or be killed. I was there when ISIS came and shot one girl with a bullet in the head because they told her to convert. She refused, and they killed her.
When you go from a home to a tent within days, how do you deal with the 120-degree heat, knowing that winter is on its way?
We are sleeping on the ground. The rain is coming and we don't know what we're going to do. We have no future.
Here in the Middle East, the Christians and the Yazidis, they cut us like sheep. There is no mercy for us.
The plight of the Yazidis reminded our translator when he was a refugee from Saddam Hussein in 1991.
It's not easy to explain. You can see, as you see, it's horrible, man.
In this tent city, life goes on. An elderly woman makes tea for her family. Young children play a game out of bottle caps. The UN supplies water. It's a refuge, but not a home. The war-weary faces of these Yazidis bear a horrific past, a precarious present, and an unknown future. Sometimes the ordeal spills over in tears. Many don't want to see Iraq anymore.
We wait for the mercy of God and people like you to be protected from the evil men.
They're also asking the U.S. and the West for help.
My request for all the believers in America and all over the world, and all the church and around the world to pray for these people.
Chris Mitchell, Behead Kandala Refugee Camp, Northern Iraq.
Up next, we'll unravel the mystery of the 4 blood moons, find out what they mean for biblical prophecy and how they relate to the turmoil in the Middle East. It's coming up after this.
Have you ever heard of a blood moon? The appearance of a single red moon is not unusual, but 4 of them appearing closely together is extremely rare. And that's what we're going to show you next.
This year, as well as next, a new book says that the mysterious signs in the sky are indications something big is about to happen in Israel. Eric Stakelbeck sat down to talk about that with author John Hagee and what this could mean for the Middle East and beyond.
The book of Genesis says God uses the sun, moon, and stars for signs and seasons. Examples can be found throughout the Bible. Think of how a star led the wise men to Jesus, or the sun stood still as Joshua led Israel to victory over its enemies. According to Pastor John Hagee, God is getting ready to speak this way once again.
There's a sense in the world that things are changing, and God is trying to communicate with us in a supernatural way. I believe that in these next 2 years, we're going to see something dramatic happen in the Middle East involving Israel that will change the course of history in the Middle East and impact the whole world.
In his latest book, 4 Blood Moons, Hagee lays out what he calls celestial signals. He describes how a series of blood moons in 2014 and 2015 will have great significance for Israel. Although single blood moons are a fairly regular occurrence, 4 of them appearing so closely together is extremely rare.
We've only seen a series of blood moons a handful of times over the past 500 years. So what exactly is a blood moon, and what is the biblical significance of it?
A blood moon is when the earth comes between the sun and the moon, and the sun is shining through the atmosphere of the earth and cast upon the moon a red shadow, and so the moon appears to be red.
Such moons appear in Scripture. In the book of Joel, God says there will be wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. In Acts, the Apostle Peter repeats that verse from Joel. And the book of Revelation says that during the Great Tribulation, the moon will become like blood. Blood moons are set to appear in April 2014 on Passover and then again in October 2014 during the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot. The timing is the same for 2015, a total of 4 blood moons all appearing on Jewish feast days.
The sun and the moon and the earth are controlled by God Almighty. He is the one that's getting them in a direct alignment on a certain day at a certain time, but each time it's a Passover or Sukkot.
In the past, the rare appearance of 4 blood moons on these feast days has coincided with major events for Israel and the Jewish people. 1492, Spain expelled the Jews. Columbus also discovered America, which became a safe haven for the Jewish people.
In each of these blood moons, you have something that begins with a tragedy and ends in triumph.
1948, Israel is reborn as a nation.
After 2,000 years, God supernaturally brought them from 66 nations, and a nation was born in a day. That, again, was a supernatural something that happened following the tragedy of the Holocaust.
1967, Israel wins the Six-Day War and recaptures Jerusalem.
For the first time in 2,000 years, Jerusalem and the state of Israel were together again.
The blood moons of 2014 and 2015 appear as Iran works towards nuclear weapons and Israel's neighbors, Egypt and Syria, are in chaos.
The end game is coming with this Iranian nuclear crisis.
The only reason Iran will not develop a nuclear bomb will be that Israel chooses a military solution to that crisis. I believe if that happens, that will start a series of events that will change the course of world history. If Israel does not, it will still change the course of world history.
Hagee warns of the Iranian nuclear threat through his work with Christians United for Israel, which he founded in 2006. It is now the largest pro-Israel organization in America, with some 1.3 million members. He also holds nights to honor Israel across the country and at San Antonio's Cornerstone Church, where he serves as senior pastor. The first event in 1981 drew bomb threats and vandalism from anti-Semites. Yet Hagee continues his mission.
If there was ever a time for the Christians of America to stiffen their spine and stand up and speak up, it's now. To see evil and not call it evil is evil.
He says it's still unclear what the coming blood moons will bring, but he is certain of one thing.
When all is said and done, Israel is going to prevail. The flag of Israel will be flying over the walls of the city of Jerusalem when Messiah comes, and it's going to be forever. And every nation that rises up in judgment against Israel, God will punish and punish severely.
Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, San Antonio, Texas.
Finally today, a short film from CBN's Chinese ministry website won the highest award at a gospel film festival in Asia.
The award was presented at this year's Golden Eagle Award ceremony in Taiwan. The theme of the contest was Father. CBN's film focused on a father's love for his adopted son who had a life-threatening tumor. The purpose of the Christian Film Festival is to encourage Chinese churches and Christians to use the power of digital media and film to share the good news.
Awesome. That's it for CBN News Today right now.
And we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Make it a wonderful Wednesday, everybody.